Now we are approaching Inside Time Incorporation, UK's Media Innovation Lab, and they will now show us how you can learn to rapidly test the MVP for consumer demand, pivoting along the way before a decision on product launch. They will now illustrate this with a recent launch they had and forthcoming launches. So very warmly welcome, please. Richard, are you called Giddings? Giddings? So, where is he? How do I spell you right? I say Giddings. Technology and Product Engineering, and Andrew Saunders, Digital Sales at Time Inc. in the UK. Very warm welcome on stage.
Hi. I'm assuming this is it's on. Brilliant. Okay, we'll talk quickly, right?
Talk quickly.
I'm Andrew, this is Richard. We're here to talk you through how we work as a innovation lab at Time Inc. The job of the lab is to really do all the things you would expect from a media innovations lab. It is about creating new products. It's about creating new products for existing media brands. It's about looking at ways that we reach new audiences and existing audiences in different forms, commercially and editorially. I'm trying to aim for 10 minutes, obviously. I'm speaking. But the key point is that we're about testing ideas in the real world. We're about testing them quickly and failing fast and moving on.
So, moving on. So I'm just going to quickly talk you through the lab process. So at the heart of what we do is insight. That could be audience insight, or that could be business insight. The next piece is build. So we only build what we need. Remember, we're building a test product at this point. We aren't building a full product. I'm sure you've all heard the term minimum viable product, or MVP. The really important piece around this is the KPIs that we define and the data points that we look at, and that allows us to learn. And we do all of this in a minimum of either 2 days or 2 weeks. 2 days could be a very simple marketing test. 2 weeks tends to be if we're trying new technology and experimenting with that. The ambition of the lab, though, is obviously to build products and hand them back to the business. So if a lab test if the lab test passes, we will then go back to the business to ask for funding and incubate the product. And that incubation period could be 3 to 6 months with investment from the business. The overall goal of the lab and the ambition is to then propagate that product back to the business. If an incubation period passes, if a product is tested and it's doing well, then it's back to business as usual.
So the propagation bit is really where I come in terms of the commercials, which is about building either those products into existing frameworks that we have commercially, or it's about finding new ways to monetize those products depending on what those products are. Don't worry, it won't all be this abstract. So over the last 18 months, there's been a team of 3. I joined the lab in January. We have done a little over 60 product tests, and we have got 6 products through to that kind of incubation propagation phase. So we're going to talk you through 3 of those. I can do all 6 if you want to have got. The first thing that we're going to take you through is List for Life, which is an entirely new media proposition for us. It's the what, how, and why of millennial work life. So it's about inspirational stories from people about what they can do with their lives. It's about practical advice, what you would do in your career or your course at university. And it's also about why you would want to do that. So whether you're looking at giving something back or whether you're looking at booking your next holiday to Bali, all of that information is there for you.
So back to the key principles of the lab, the first thing that we do is insight. So we met with a group of millennials, and the first thing we asked them is where do they think the opportunity in this competitor set is? And this is how they perceive the media landscape at the moment. So as you can see, a nice slot for List for Life, somewhere between career and utility, a gap in the market that this audience felt that there was something there. The next thing we needed to understand was how do we address this audience? How should we be speaking to them? What tone should we be using? And for me, there were 3 key takeaways here. Talk to me like an adult. That's key to the tone of this brand. And then show me, don't tell me. Also very, very key to, and at the heart of List for Life. The third and probably the most important thing is spiders. People don't like spiders, apparently.
Lots of people don't like spiders, but I think we're used to getting answers like that coming back from the focus groups that we work with. And the reason that we get answers like that is actually very positive. It's because we're asking them very simple, very direct, very emotionally linked questions. We're not trying to marketing it up. We're not trying to make it complicated. We're asking them very simple things like, what are their hopes? What are their dreams? What are they scared of? So that leads us into the data-driven editorial that we have. When we're setting that up, that enables us to keep really, really focused on our goals for the brand as a site and what it's delivering to this audience, which means that rather than getting a bunch of kind of grey old people like myself to write the site, we hired an all-millennial editorial team, and they are using things like Google Analytics, social analytics, listening tools, day-to-day peer insight, all day, every day, producing that content that this audience has told us that they want to see, and we're trying not to deviate from that at all. The really interesting thing for me is that that means there aren't any shortcuts to advertising to this audience. My background is in advertising, and we've all seen the stats that prove that native advertising is much more engaging, people are much more responsive to it, but you can't shortcut what you're doing with that. You have to apply the same rigor and discipline that you're applying to your editorial to your native advertising. So that means that you're constantly analyzing it, measuring it, testing it, and learning what's effective, because this audience is very, very switched on. They don't mind it as long as it's clearly labeled, as long as it's adding value to them. It kind of comes back to that Howard Luck-Gossage quote about people don't really ever read advertising. They read what they're interested in, and sometimes that's an ad. So with List for Life, we try and give them advertising that they're really engaged with. The next product that we're going to talk you through is, well, we are PR launching this over the next couple of weeks. We've been incubating it for 3 or 4 months, which is called Live Smart, which is about smart technology, as you may guess, but it's about putting a human voice against that technology. Now, whereas List for Life was born out of consumer insight, Live Smart is probably coming from much more of a business insight point of view and business imperatives. It won't shock anyone that experts are predicting that consumer spend, therefore advertising spend, around this category is going to grow pretty much exponentially. So last year, about $3 trillion was spent on this category by consumers. By 2020, people are predicting that will be about $7 trillion, and by 2022, so shortening that distance, that will be over $14 trillion, well on the way to $15 trillion. So that really is looking like exponential growth in this category.
So back to the lab, we have to have some insights. So there's great business opportunity here. The market's forecasting huge amounts of spend, but is there a consumer proposition here? So we commissioned a YouGov survey, and 84% of UK adults had heard the term smart technology. So that's great news. That's going in the direction of that 14.4 trillion spend. The bad news is that 39% of them didn't actually understand what it meant. So really good for our insight, great for an opportunity. The consumer need for this product was really, really simple. Consumers need help and guidance when navigating their way around this landscape. Internet of Things is riddled with jargon and tech phrases. So the answer is very simple. It's Live Smart. It's a website where you're not going to hear jargon. You're not going to hear 4K or HD. You're going to be told, in real-life situations, why do I need this product in my house, and how is it going to make my life better? Back to that point of it's a technology site with a human voice.
So this is allowing us to deliver a strategy or develop a strategy where we are joining a journey with these consumers, and a lot of them are at different places on that journey. So we've had to do a lot of thinking about how we deliver editorial to them. Live Smart as a brand will always have a home as a website, but we are disaggregating that content. We are providing editorial on demand, because increasingly it doesn't really matter where people consume it, it's why they're consuming it. So we're looking at all sorts of different ways of monetizing that kind of matrix media brand, if you will, because it's about where people want to pull that in and what they're going to use it for. The really positive thing for us is that gives us a lot more data points.
Oh, it's okay.